My name is Stephen King. I want to tell you about a movie called Maximum Overdrive.
Maximum terror, maximum king.
Let's say there's a semi-truck driving towards you, roughly 25 miles an hour.
Okay.
What direction would you run?
I gotta think north to south, man. Just
Like towards it or away? Kind of give you a little bit of extra time.
I wouldn't move laterally, that's for sure.
Pretty close, but the correct answer is actually sideways.
Ah, damn it.
Stephen King's Maximum Overdrive.
Stephen King is literally drunk while making this movie.
I'm going to scare the hell out of you.
Not when I shift into maximum overdrive.
Dude.
What? What's poppin', corn dogs? Bienvenuto, everybody. Benny Noodle, another food pun. We're back. We got some badass intro music compliments of our friends over at Electro Swing Thing. Shout out Wolfgang. This guy was super nice, and they're letting us borrow their sweet tunes. What do you think, Nick?
Hey, I love it. I love people who create stuff. I like to think of ourselves as creators as well, and just a little community of helping each other out.
And I know we always joke around saying like, oh, George Miller, friend of the show, Samuel L. Jackson, friend of the show, Clancy Brown, friend of the show. I think Wolfgang is literally a friend of the show. So shout out Wolfgang, straight out of Berlin. We appreciate you. Go check out their music. It's awesome. This is basically the playlist of the month for me. This is my jam. They're located at electroswingthing.com. We're back, week 2, spooky season. It's time to get gruesome and hoary. I mean, horny? No, horror-y. I'm your host, Jimmy Popcorn, Colonel Pop, Captain Corn, Mr. Crunch himself. I'm James, Jimmy Crack Corn, one of your hosts. Sitting across from me in Tennessee is my best friend.
That's right. I can't make as good of an intro as you.
You just need to start rambling.
But I'm Nick, and I'm just refer to myself as the main corn dog. The dog himself, the dog of corn. We're both corn puns, so, that's where we're at. This isn't like last week's Signs, though. This isn't like last week's Signs. That was very corn-focused.
A lot of corn.
This is something different this week, James.
Very different, I'd say. We're not focused on corn this week. We are focused on vehicular manslaughter. Very good, cheery stuff, I know. You're nodding your head. This is Horror Week, week 2, October. We out here. We're watching old school, quote-unquote, scary movies.
Would you classify this one as a scary movie, having watched it?
After watching it, no. But on paper, it's supposed to be, because this movie is written and directed by legendary horror novelist Stephen King.
True that.
We are watching and reviewing Stephen King's Maximum Overdrive.
Wow.
From 1986.
With a name like that, it's got to be good, right?
It's got to be super badass.
I mean, movies with that title don't just suck, right?
This is Stephen King's first and only directing job.
Shocked, I tell you. Shocked at that.
This movie stars Emilio Estevez. Emilio! Pat Hingle. I didn't think he'd come up.
McCringleberry.
I didn't think Hingle McCringleberry would come up so soon after just appearing in 1989's Batman.
Pat Hingle's back, dude.
I didn't know that Hingles was going to make a that quick of a turnaround return to the Just Play It podcast. Welcome back, McCringleberry.
This is the height of Hingle.
Hingle McCringleberry.
Rounding out this cast is Laura Harrington. And the only thing I know her from is What's Eating Gilbert Grape.
All right.
So that's what we're working with.
You're telling me this movie didn't make a lot of careers.
Now, this had an estimated budget of $10 million. I saw $9 million elsewhere, so we're in that range. It's fine. And only grossed $7.4 million at the box office. So, bit of a loss. Doesn't really qualify as a box office bomb. And oddly enough, looking at the ratings for this movie, did not qualify as a flop, but it was very close. The ratings from our 5 outlets averaged this out at a 41.4.
I'm going to put a spoiler alert out there. The people carried it.
It kind of makes you wonder, is this a cult classic in people's eyes? It might be.
It could be.
41.4 was the average rating of our movie review sources that we pull numbers from. Nick, would you care to read this logline of Maximum Overdrive?
I would absolutely love to. A group of people try to survive when machines start to come alive and become homicidal.
Homicidal or homicidal?
Homicidal.
All right, there it is. Okay, Nick. So I'm just gonna disclaimer, spoiler alert. I'm just gonna put it out there. This is a horrible movie.
It's bad.
Like, we're gonna come out and say this right out the gates. I think you can agree with me. We do not need to have a slow realization throughout the plot talk that, hey, this actually wasn't a good movie, or this actually was a good movie. We both knew it halfway through, a quarter of the way through, maybe 2 minutes in. Definitely by the end of it. With that said, it had us asking the question, is this the worst movie that we have ever seen? Spawn, which we watched last season, I gave it a rating of a 0.6. 0.6. That was horrible.
Yes.
My reason for dipping below the ones was because I not only hated the movie, but I hated the treatment of the movie, and I hated the people who made the movie.
Yes.
It's a lot of hate, and that's hard for me to get there.
A lot of hate.
Hard for me to get there.
And for reference, my review of 2003's Hulk is a 1.2. And that is currently my lowest rated movie on this podcast. But James, we're dipping past on this podcast. We're saying of all time. I'm saying outside of this podcast. You had not seen this before, neither have I.
Correct.
We raw dogged it into this one.
Raw corn dog.
I've seen a lot of bad movies. And so we're asking, where does this rank? Not on this podcast list of movies. In the pantheon of films, where do we land?
We've laid the groundwork. This movie's not good. And we're going to discuss if it is, in fact, the worst movie we've ever seen. We barely go below The Adventures of Pluto Nash. That is a threshold that is just...
That's the bottom of the barrel.
It's tough to penetrate. On multiple occasions, you've said, oh, I give this movie a 2.7 just because I can't go below Pluto Nash. No, I think we can probably go through that. I'm curious if this is worse than Spawn to me, because I despised that movie, the treatment of the movie, the spitting in the face of the source material. This is pretty similar because this is based on a short story, but the caveat is the writer of that short story is also the director of the movie.
And the writer of the script.
Spoilers out there. This movie is horrible. How bad is it? And we're about to discuss that as we jump into Plot Talk.
Plot Talk?
Plot Talk. Okay, so this Plot Talk is going to be way different. I don't think we're going to really even need to stick to the literal script. We'll roughly go through the timeline of this movie, but honestly, it's just going to be a recollection of just bizarre scenes that didn't make sense. This is going to be an unconventional episode, so please fasten your seatbelts as we go maximum overdrive in the plot.
The only reason we're doing this chronologically is so that we could just hit all the shit we want to talk about.
It's essentially just a bullet point list.
It's exactly what it is. Let's start with where we start this movie off. We start this movie off and we see this...
Instructions! That's how we start this movie, baby.
Oh, you're right. You're right. James, hit us with the instructions.
It's my favorite plot device because plot devices are not good to fall victim to when movie making. But there is the plot device trope of an introductory title card that explains what's going on in this world. And just going off memory, I believe it was planet Earth was in the tail of a comet in outer space. So there's all these like gases and dust that are encapsulating the planet. And then so we're like, oh, okay, like I guess that's vital information for this movie.
Something spooky's going to happen, right? We had signs last week. Aliens are around. We're like, okay, space is scary. We can get with that.
Something weird's happening, and we're about to get clunky up in this bitch. So we're like, okay, outer space, mysterious stuff is happening in the background. After reading that log line, I thought it was about murderous vehicles. Let's see where this goes. I'm very interested to see how they tie this in.
Can I start off the rip by saying this, James? I was excited to watch this movie. I actually was. The title was good. You know, it's a Stephen King, which is like, okay, it's 80s. It's going to be cheesy. I thought it was going to be maybe a little like over the top cheesy where it was fun. Like that was the Wraith for you, right? It was over the top, cheesy.
My God.
It just,
what a great time.
It hit that fun zone.
We were wraith deep in the fun zone, I tell you.
Yeah, the escape from New York, cheesy but over the top. We enjoyed it, right? You're like, oh, these characters, everything's just over the top. Even in a way, cruel, right? Not a great movie, but it was like, okay, at least I'm into this in some way. Like it's funky.
You
So
are
I was
preaching to the choir over here because I was in it to win it as well. I was ready for that
Yeah.
80s camp cheese ball joyride.
I was excited for it.
What I got was a convoluted show. But one of the very first things we see is malfunctioning machines.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like one of those Wall Street
Tickers.
electric signs. Is that what they're called? Tickers?
Yeah, and
Like a digital marquee.
yeah, a lot of banks will have the temperature on it, kind of thing.
Yeah. So instead of the temperature, it just says "fuck you," and I assume that's to the audience because we're about to go through just a slap in the face
We don't even get breakfast.
for the next hour and 40 minutes. No breakfast, just a good old "fuck you."
We don't even get wined and dined in 69. We just get fucked. Right off the bat, when I see something like this, when I see this sign that just says "fuck you," I'm like, right from Jump Street, we're trying to be edgy. That's the message it sends to me as an audience member. You're trying really hard to be edgy.
You came for the gruesome slaughterhouse movie, but just so you know, strap in. You're about to get hit with a lot of dark humor. That's the tone for this movie. The second clue that this is a slap in the face and is Stephen King makes a cameo. He's at an ATM and it calls him an asshole.
It's our second week in a row of the director making a cameo.
Maybe that's foreshadowing something about Stephen King's directing on this movie. That just repetitively said he's an asshole. I was like, well, all right, well, let's. So
He's at an ATM. It's just asshole, asshole, asshole. And again, I'm like, okay, we get it. You're swearing like a fourth grader who just learned your words.
haha, lol. So we're in Wilmington, North Carolina, kind of like a small town vibe. They're just kind of jumping around the city, showing exterior shots and random people having conversations. There's some bridge workers who operate the drawbridge. They're talking baseball.
Oh, can we talk about them talking baseball though?
Oh yeah, you're the baseball guy.
I'm a baseball nerd. My first question when watching this is, I go, what year is this?
As you crack open the bourbon bottle.
Oh, my buddy, I need my fuel for this one. I go, what year is this? Because they mentioned like, oh, did you see Mickey Mantle last night? And I go, Mickey Mantle retired in, I think, 68, if I'm not mistaken. I'm like, so is this 1968? I think this is supposed to be the 80s, just judging by everything else. Like ATMs? ATMs, I don't think, like, that's not the 60s. And then the other guy goes, no. And the guy is talking about Mickey Mantle goes, he hit it about 250 feet. And I was like, that's a f***ing pop fly. What are you talking? Like, even old Yankee Stadium, the walls were over 300 feet all around the park. So I'm like, that's not a home run. So this is just lazy. This is like, honestly, it sounds like Stephen King, who was like, I'm a horror writer nerd. I don't know baseball, but bridge operators would talk baseball. And for a sec, Wilmington, North Carolina. No, they don't care about baseball. Wilmington, North Carolina. They talk about the Duke basketball game. Jackass.
Is it possible that he was talking about a different Mickey Mantle, who's maybe a high school player?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, there is a baseball team of kids, like a bench warmers team that shows up later. So maybe he was talking about a different Mickey Mantle.
On the Little League team in town.
Yeah.
Hit a ball 250 feet.
But no, I caught that too. And I was like, that doesn't seem that far because Oracle Park, the back center wall is $3.99. It seems
even
shallow,
the corners
right?
are $3.30. I mean, people, like, if you're sitting there on the podcast, if you're listening and you go, yeah, but it was old time, so baseball. Old Yankee Stadium and the Polo Grounds, the walls were like 405 to the corners. It was like 450 to dead center. Like, this isn't, no. 250 feet is a wiffle ball field.
It's almost as if Stephen King was drunk when he made this. So we're at this drawbridge, and there all of a sudden we're seeing that switches and buttons are being activated by themselves. No one's turning these knobs. No one's pushing these buttons. So there's some sort of vindictive supernatural force behind certain machines, as we've seen throughout this beginning montage, post instructions. This drawbridge starts going up as these two yahoos are talking about baseball. There's a group of motorists on the bridge. This is where we get our first sense of the general IQ of the public of this town, because this town is full of idiots.
Oh,
Like no one knows how to react to a minimal danger situation, let alone a fatal one, which is to come very soon. There's this guy who's actually parked in the middle of the bridge. So his truck is getting lifted up as the bridge is rising up to a almost 45-degree angle. He opens his driver door to look down, and he decides, time to gun it. Time to put this into maximum overdrive, bitch. I'm from Wilmington, North Carolina. NASCAR, start your engines.
Maximum Overdrive.
So he rips it. This ends up making the rear axle fall off, and I believe his truck falls into the river.
big time.
Instead of calmly getting out of his truck and climbing to safety, he just decides, nope, I'm gonna gun it.
Can we talk about the best part of this scene?
The motorcycle guy that falls in, the watermelons, the lady that crashes the car and slams through her windshield. What's the best part about this sequence?
The best part of this sequence is in the opening credits, you see a big music by AC/DC.
Oh yeah.
And during this whole time, you just have like, yeah, like AC/DC riffs going on, like
there's an AC/DC van in this scene that becomes
There
victim
is.
to the now dramatically slanted bridge that's just causing cars to crash into each other. Car slams into another one. This lady flies through this windshield, which is not safety glass.
oh yeah.
It's just like Stone Cold Steve Austin shattered status. A bunch of watermelons are in a truck. They start raining down hell on the cars that are below the watermelon truck. Some guy gets out and slips on the watermelon, eats shit. There's a motorcycle that just kind of lamely falls down the ramp and then just kind of falls into the water. It's not really that fast or dramatic, but he was really trying to sell it like it was.
Yeah, people are getting out of their cars and just like falling to the ground, like in panic.
It's a lot of flailing.
A lot of flailing.
It was like in Grand Theft Auto 5, my wife and I would do this thing where we would take a bus and block the freeway on-ramp, and it would lead to this construction ramp that you can send a car off onto the freeway that is down below. We would park the bus next to that opening, fire a gun, and watch the NPCs just go ballistic and start start sending it off this ramp. And we just thought it was a kick.
Stephen King had it before you.
This is the on-screen adaptation of Grand Theft Auto NPCs.
At the end of the scene, this like van is like tipping over as it's like on the start of the bridge, and like everything's quiet. Van tips over and smashes on its roof, and as it smashes, the AC/DC kicks back in, and it's like, wow, yeah. This is what we're doing.
We're like, okay,
and so now we're like, something's afoot.
just to deconstruct this plot talk, here's what's going to happen. There's a truck stop called the Dixie Boy. That's where most of this movie is going to take place. There's a cast of randos at this truck stop, and essentially it's going to focus on them holding up in said truck stop. There's not really a coherent story or necessarily person that we're following this whole time, because at one point we're following this hitchhiking girl. Everyone ends up the truck stop, and this other point we're following this little boy on a bicycle. And then, of course, there's Emilio Estevez, who is quote-unquote the protagonist, but we'll see about how much protagonisting he does in this movie.
At this Dixie Boy truck stop, there's an employee, Duncan. He's trying to pump gas, and it's not working. And so what do you do? James, if something's not working, what do you do?
Did I say that this town was full of idiots already?
Yeah, what do you do, James?
Me, in today's times, I Google, how do I fix this, or why is the gas pump not working? What does this guy do? Just like how you should do with gun safety. If the gun's not working, you should just point the barrel at your face and see what's wrong.
And keep trying. Keep holding down the trigger.
It's like, what the fuck are you doing, dude?
So he rips diesel into his eyes. He's pretty much blind at this point.
This idiot is played by J.C. Quinn. His IMDb profile picture is him with, it's a screenshot from this movie with super irritated eyes.
Just fucked up eyes.
That's how I knew J.C. Quinn played this guy.
So this truck stop also has a diner inside, and we have a waitress, Wanda, and there's an electric knife, like a turkey carving knife, and she's putting together some food. This thing kicks on. It's maybe like 5 inches from her arm. She does not notice, and the thing just buzzes towards her arm, gashes into her arm. She freaks out. It falls to the ground. If the arm wasn't enough, it then rips through her canvas shoes and cuts up her foot. Bill, Emilio Estevez's character, comes in, destroys this thing with a hammer, just rips it apart, and now Bill is like, something's up. Bill is a parolee, so there's this big bad boss of the Dixie Boys.
Pat Hingle is running like a weird halfway house employment center for parolees. Because on his, I think it's on the time punch card. Is that what that's
called?
Time
cards, yeah.
The time card punch thing. He says, "Look, boy, you got a star up in that corner. You know what that means? It means you're on parole. It means I can do whatever I want. Call the state of North Carolina. Tell them that you ain't doing a good job if you don't fucking work for 9 hours and I only pay you for 8. So we're like, okay, so we're getting like Doug Dimmadomed right off the rip. Sans 10-gallon hat.
Owner of the Dixie Boys Dimmadome.
This is Pat Hingle McCringleberry.
Hingle McCringleberry.
And he plays Hendershot. I had no idea that was his character name, but that's what's coming up on IMDb.
Oh, I knew that because that's like it's the most prototypical like bad guy. Because like all the time they're like, "Screw you, Hendershot.
You're one son of a bitch.
You're one salty bastard, Hendershot."
So Hingle McCringleberry runs this Dixie Boy truck stop and has hired a bunch of parolees to work it and basically can use that as leverage to mistreat them.
I like the mistreating him is like, "I'm going to pay you for 8 hours and you're going to work 9. Not going to pay you your hour of overtime." It's like, okay.
I guess it could be worse. Yeah, Hingle McCringleberry, he's like a mumbly southern ass talking Mr. Dimmadome. And Emilio Estevez, who plays Bill, I didn't even really catch his name.
Yeah.
I think they just kept referring to him as Hero in the movie.
For no reason.
Laura Harrington, who plays Brett. And I was confused because this is pre-common sense of don't get in a stranger's car. But it took me a while, but I figured, oh, she's a hitchhiker.
She's a drifter, yeah.
She comes into town in this guy's car. And I was like, is this her husband? Is this her dad? I don't know. He seems like a dick and she's not into him. They seem like complete strangers. And they were, because she's hitchhiking. I was like, oh, this is before like women were scared for their lives on screen to get in like a strange man's car in the middle of fucking nowhere.
No stranger danger.
This truck stop also has an arcade. Now, what happens in this arcade, Nick?
So in this arcade, there are pinball machines and obviously arcade games. And there's this black guy who's in there by himself. And the machines all start freaking out and they break. And they like open up and like some of the money falls out. And like there's a cigarette vending machine that busts and some cigarettes fall out. And this black guy just explains,
Yo, mama.
And starts like collecting all the cigarettes and change. And I was like, why did he shout yo mama?
Blaxploitation. Yeah.
So this is going to happen a lot.
Stick with this guy.
Okay, we'll stick with this guy. This happens a little later, but then what happens to this guy is he then gets drawn over to this arcade game and he touches it and he just gets electrocuted. And I would say that this electrocution animation is like Stealth. If you followed along with this podcast, you know Stealth when the lightning strikes and the electricity just like transfers to somebody and runs up their arm and just like fries them.
Doesn't it launch him back like 10 feet?
Yeah, this pissed me off because he touched the outside of the arcade game, which is wood, which, as we all know, does not conduct electricity. So I'm like, what? we're going to go through, Jay, because I want to go through.
Well,
because what happens? Okay.
Talking about the black guy still or no?
No, I'm moving on. If you got black guy stuff, still go. Still, yeah.
Well, I got black guy stuff. Can I blow your mind right now?
Please do.
Top tier face recognition. I was looking at this guy and I was about 60% confident. I was like, there's no way that's this guy. This black guy was Giancarlo Esposito.
No.
Yeah,
No. Fuck you. No.
100% it was.
No. Are you
It-
kidding me?
I'm not. I saw it in the credits. My last note of the plot, I was like, it was Giancarlo. Nick is shook right now. If you can see his
Dude,
face, he's doing the surrender cobra.
I'm full.
He can't believe it.
I am shook, dude.
Esposito.
That is. I need
I'm telling you, man. I can see these faces. I can see these faces.
Oh my god! I didn't even see enough of his face to even try and figure it out. But
you know what it was? It was the eyes.
Holy smokes! Oh my goodness!
Ladies and gentlemen, I delivered. Nick's mind is blown like that pinball arcade machine. Nick is like, he's like hella shook. He's like, look, he's like checking the tape right now.
Dude, I'm in IMDb. I'm like, there's no. Oh my god!
So you said
shocked.
this movie didn't make any careers. You could shove it because he's one of the great. He's like one of the most iconic actors of modern times.
Wow, I'm really glad you stopped me and gave me that extra bit of information because holy smokes.
You like that? You like that? You like that?
You like that? You like that?
Dude, I need a second to just like I need to compose myself.
This is Gus Fring. This is Moff Gideon. This is the meme himself, Giancarlo Esposito, best actor in this movie, and he got killed off in seconds.
Wow.
Okay, you can continue.
Okay. Next what happened, so this what I feel like happened was Stephen King wrote this premise and then he thought of every single scenario that he could come up with this premise being part of a horror sequence. And so we're just now going to get a lot of one-off moments. And so the first one of this is a Little League game that James referenced earlier. We have this kid, Deke, and the coach is like, sodas on me. Everybody's like, yay! And the guy goes over to the vending machine and he goes to get a soda. And dude, this machine starts ripping out soda cans at like 150 miles an hour.
It nutshots this guy.
Nutshots him, bends him over, and then just cracks his skull with a can of pop.
If that's what it did to his skull, I don't even want to know what it did to his soft nuts.
Exploded.
Splody nuts.
I would hope that thing would kill me if it did. Like, if my nuts were as mangled as his were, like I'd be like, just please kill me next. Kill me quick because I don't want to go through this anymore. I mean, there's a scene where he's laying on the ground and the kid is like, goes up to him like, are you okay? And I mean, there's just this.
It's the bottom of a soda can imprint, just crater in his head. They have no problem showing the special effects behind the scenes, how this happened, because they literally just put the camera up to the soda machine dispenser. And you could see like these two, what are those things at the batting cages?
Tubes
that just shoot the balls towards the batter.
I wrote down, it looks like a potato gun.
It's like a t-shirt cannon. Just
yeah.
The shot where the kids are running away and getting pelted by soda cans. You know, there was just a bunch of PAs that were handed a bunch of cans and they're like, here, throw them at these kid actors trying to hit them. So there's this one kid who we do follow. He ends up being related to the dumbass who sprayed himself in the face with diesel. He's the one we focus on. So he goes and checks on homeboy who got nutted and headshotted.
Wait, one of the kid gets flattened by a road roller.
Well, I was going to hold on. I was going to say, like a kid, they're all running away from the rogue soda machine, and a kid gets on his bike and eats shit on the grass, lays down, and then like this land Zamboni comes out, is coming towards
like
the kid.
Asphalt flatteners, dude.
Yeah, no, it's like a steamroller that comes bursting through the fence of the outfield. And the kid's on the ground. I was like, oh, okay, here we go. Moment of suspense. They're not going to kill a kid. Fucking flattens this kid. I was like, oh, they super killed the kid.
Just tube of toothpaste, dude. Just rolls him up. Just fucking...
It's not like super graphic with like the blood on the kid. But yeah, it's like the imagery is just like, it just looks like a rubber body. And then the head's the last thing you see.
And again, like I said, we just jump to like these scenarios. So we have these newlyweds, Connie and Kurt. They stop at a gas station. This woman, Connie, who plays her,
Yeardley Smith.
This is
Lisa
Yeardley
Simpson.
Yes. So she has to pee, so they stop at this gas station, and Kurt walks up to the door of the gas station, and the gas station attendant's just like murdered, bloody on the ground. And he's like, oh, it's time to investigate, instead of the correct reaction of just get out of there. So then this tow truck like pulls out of the back with no driver there, right? Because the machines have been taken over. And he's like looking at this tow truck. He's like, hey, help. And I'm like, you can see through the windshield. There's nobody in this tow truck. This tow truck is like covered in blood. I'm like, how many people have you killed? The mud flaps are bloody. The headlights are bloody. I'm like, good Lord, this thing has been through a slaughter. Tries to kill Kurt. He runs away, gets back in his car with Connie and escapes. And I'm like, if this thing could just take over vehicles, why doesn't it just take over their car? Like, what are the rules? What are the rules of this entity?
So the steamroller was driverless. This tow truck is driverless. It seems like it's only trucks and utility vehicles, which
confined.
I was going to say it makes sense, but it doesn't make sense. But it makes sense because the short story from Stephen King is called Trucks, and it's only trucks come alive. The cars in the short story don't come alive. So in this movie, they don't explain that because we have turkey carvers, ATMs, arcade machines, and only large vehicles. The regular sedans are fine. They have no qualms with humans.
It shuts off the lights of the Dixie Boy as well. So I'm like, you have control over electricity. I mean, the pinball machines, the arcade games. I'm like, what do you and don't you have control of?
No rhyme or reason of what they choose to control. There's even like a lawnmower that attacks Deke in the neighborhood. And then the ice cream truck. An ice cream truck chases Deke down on his bike. He's strolling through the hood and he's seeing all these dead ass humans from vehicle accidents and whatnot. And he's just taking it all in. Not really freaking out. He's just like,
well, spoiler alert, later on we get a hand cart truck with a mounted machine gun on it.
Yeah, I was like, okay.
So we do have to introduce the big bad truck, which is a toy truck. The front of this truck has mounted on it a giant mask of Spider-Man's Green Goblin.
Yeah, no, and this is literally Marvel's Green Goblin because they signed off on it. They said this is okay. So this is the comic iteration of the Green Goblin, and it's just a huge, like, what is it, plastic mold of the Green Goblin.
Eyes turn red sometimes if they want to. Don't know why. Don't know how.
Yeah, they wanted to literally give these murderous sentient trucks a face, and it ended up being Marvel's Green Goblin of all things.
Whew.
Pretty bizarre.
Let's come back to Kurt and his wife, Lisa Simpson, because this is hilarious. They're back driving. They got away from that gas station, and they're getting pursued by a semi-truck in probably one of the funnier chase scenes I've ever seen, because this sedan is just not faster than the semi-truck, and they're doing this whole, like, the semi-truck pulls up to catch it, then they pull away,
and Connie's
pull up to catch it, pull away.
Backseat driving from the passenger seat, going,
It's coming after us! Look out, Curtis! It's gonna bomb us! Why is this happening? Is that you never shall let you drive again? Curtis! Make it stop bombing us!
Connie, shut up. You're not helping. And Curtis can't drive for shit. You're telling me he can't outmaneuver a truck?
He tries to outmaneuver it, and they go to the camera inside the car, and he yanks on the steering wheel in what you'd be like, wow, he's pulling like a pit, like maneuver, like pull the e-brake.
He breaks the ankles of this truck. I'm like, finally, you're using maneuverability.
The turns of the steering wheel inside the car from those shots do not match the movement on the outside of the car. He's like cranking the steering wheel like 90 degrees to the left, and the car like drifts left. Then he cranks it 90 degrees right, and the car like drifts, like merges into the next lane. I'm like, what the fuck?
It's almost like this wasn't directed correctly.
And then he shakes it, and the truck flies off the road, and it just explodes. Just like a fiery fireball. It must have been a third of the budget, that explosion right there.
Stupid.
Curtis, what is going on?
I don't know!
But I know we can call the police from that truck stop up there.
They pull up to the Dixie Boy, and at this point in the game, all of the evil trucks are just circling the Dixie Boy, like taunting them. Just circling. Not crashing into it.
Like a
not trying
weird
to hurt them.
intimidation tactic.
And Kurt's outside of the Dixie Boy, and he's like, we got to get inside there. And his wife's like, what are you talking about? He's like, we got to get into the Dixie Boy. We got to get into this death circle.
Remember when I said this town was full of idiots with really bad ideas? Curtis's bright idea is like, time to shoot the gap of these circling trucks.
Kurt's like, I'm going to shoot the gap.
He's like, I'm going to finna shoot this gap, Connie. Watch me cook right now behind the steering wheel. We need to get into that super safe building that the trucks are circling, where there's a bunch of hold up, pinned down, dumbass hicks, and then we can join their misery. And what does Curtis do as he tries to quote unquote shoot the gap, which are pretty big gaps?
Super big gaps.
These are not precision maneuvers. You do not need to be a professional stunt driver to make said gap shot. What happens?
On a 2-lane major road, it is a gap that I would feel very comfortable taking a left on from the suicide lane. I would be like, yep, that's a good gap. Turn, I'm in. No, he tries to shoot the gap, fails, gets clipped, and the car overturns.
Fucks up, muffs the gap, and gets clipped by one of these trucks, which are not moving fast.
No, they're moving at the speed of a semi-truck in a residential neighborhood. People go out to help them with the overturned car. They do grab them as they run back. Our homeboy Hendershot, played by Pat Hingle McCringleberry, he reveals in his back pocket he has an RPG.
RPG, gentlemen!
He's got a bazooka.
And people ask him, where did you get that? And he just goes, yeah, don't worry about it. I was down at the depot.
Fucking truck's supposed to be depot. That was a depot, be sure. I get right there, Calais. Now we win a kind of fuck all we go to. That way I get a book all that my back.
And that's the end of it. And this RPG is used through the rest of the film,
Which is great.
liberally.
Which is
Liberally.
which is a smart idea. They should keep using RPGs. They're very effective on semi trucks.
There's at least 15 more shots. Where'd you get this ammunition?
Apparently, it was at the depot.
They never explain like, hey, we got to conserve ammo. He's just like, let him rip. The more shots and then he fires off like 3 shots. I'm like, fire off everything you have to get out of here. And why is this coming out now? Hendershot, what are you doing?
Dude, Hingle is unhinged.
Good Lord.
Read over we doing. Come on, read over, boy.
I didn't watch it with subtitles on. I know you do. Maybe you caught a little more than I did.
Okay.
But
So I try to make this a thing with the podcast. I like to reveal how I watch these movies. Sometimes I need to get a Starz 7-day trial to watch The Burbs. This one I had to source from Pluto TV, the Pluto TV app. It was free with ads.
It's a great app.
The subtitles, however, appeared on screen a solid 5 seconds before the dialogue was actually spoken.
Oh no.
So yeah. I was thinking this is kind of ruining the experience, but I was like, what experience? This movie sucks.
Totally off topic. My wife loves subtitles. I'm not a subtitle guy.
My wife she's trending towards subtitles as well.
I am anti-subtitles. I think it's a visual and audio experience, but my wife recently likes having them during like stand-up comic shows.
That's the worst.
That we watch. I'm like, I see the punchline.
No, that's like the worst time to insert subtitles.
Yeah.
We put it on for like Star Wars shows because they name drop all these weird ass planets and enemies and allies. And we're just like, what the hell did they just say? Like, was that a name? Was that a word? A stand-up special? No. Come on, Elizabeth. Come on. Anyway, let's kill off some of these characters. Duncan, the dumbass who sprayed himself with diesel, he gets smacked by a semi, and it is hella bloody. It is hella bloody on impact, and then on the
it's like you took a hammer to a ketchup packet.
It's like Gallagher was out there hitting watermelons.
I was thinking that because there was the watermelons in the opening scene.
She wants the Gallagher!
So he gets Gallaghered by a semi-truck. It just smacks the fuck out of him, and his head pops. The cutaway shot of him rolling on the ground, he seems fine. There's minimal blood, but he's hella dead. I see this. You wrote down the salesman name. Is it Camp Loman?
Camp Loman, yes.
That's his name?
That's his credited name.
Okay. So I'm just going to call him a salesman.
Okay.
I mean, he doesn't have a lot of on-screen time. So he kind of plays the delirious, ignorant idiot amongst this whole group of idiots. He's the one who travels in with Laura Harrington, aka Brett, with 2 T's. So Brett and the salesman roll into the truck stop. The salesman's kind of creepy, kind of touching her leg. And it's like, okay. We're like, okay, this guy's obviously someone we don't care about. Murder his ass. Who cares? He goes out and starts yelling at these trucks. And then just a semi-truck in reverse, not that fast, just kind of like smacks into him, knocks him over. He falls into a ravine.
Drainage ditch, yeah. Ravine drainage ditch deal.
And then later I was like, I was thinking, is he going to get up?
Not get up.
So Brett and Bill have sex.
Brett's calling Bill, Emilio Estevez's character, hero the whole time. Like, what has this guy done?
He's a criminal.
Oh, also, before they have sex, Hendershot comes in. He's like, oh, you guys have something going on? Did he tell you? He's a bloodthirsty man on parole. He robbed a bank. I was like, that's not bloodthirsty. The guy just robbed a bank. I don't know. He's a good old classic John Dillinger. What's your fucking problem, dude?
Tingle me Kringleberry.
Was it armed robbery? Did he murder a bunch of people as he robbed a bank?
I mean, murderers don't go on parole. Like, yeah, he's a classic John Dillinger. He's bloodthirsty.
Oh, by the way, the salesman, he does this really dumb thing where, let's say there's a semi-truck driving towards you, roughly 25 miles an hour.
Okay.
What direction would you run?
I got to think north to south, man.
Pretty close, but the correct answer is actually sideways.
Damn it.
When a slow-moving, heavy vehicle is driving towards you. And Emilio Estevez, actually the hero, Bill Hero, actually tries to pull him sideways, and salesman's like, no, I got this. Well, I'm going to run away in the direction it's chasing me.
It reminds me of those videos of the guys who cut down a tree and then they run in the direction the tree is falling.
Just like run anywhere else.
It was a decision.
He made a business decision, and that business was to get wrecked by a semi-truck.
My man would love Jerome Bettis. He just runs north-south, man.
So Brett is like, oh, I came in with this salesman, and now he's dead. And I borrowed it, and his stench is on my clothes. I want to get him off. And I thought, he's dead from that? And it turns out later he's not dead. He's like just suffering in the ravine.
Screaming at the kid when the kid rolls up on the ravine. He's like, help me or I'll kill you. I'm like, what the shit, dude? God.
The baseball player kid rolls up on the bike and he's trying to sneak into...
Yeah, he's made like a 30-mile journey on his bike.
He's had a rough ride throughout this movie.
He's seen a lot of death.
Saw a lot of death, a lot of like sentient vehicles killing people. And he makes it to the truck stop because he's trying to get to his dad, who's super dead.
Have I ever showed you a picture of my dead dad? He's super dead.
Who works at Dixie Boy? Duncan, the gas in the eye.
Diesel-eyed Duncan works at Dixie Boy.
Diesel-eyed Duncan.
And Deke's like looking for his dad. He's trying to infiltrate the Dixie Boy, but this is the circling trucks situation. He tries to crawl through like a storm drain, like a sewage drain, and that's where he runs into a salesman, and the salesman like clutches at his ankles and is like, you gotta help me.
It's like, I can't.
He's like, what the hell is going on? Curtis and Bill, meanwhile, they venture out. They want to go try and save the salesman because they're good people, quote unquote.
They crawl through the shower drain from like the truck stop showers.
Disgusting.
But they do pop up. They were going to help the guy, and then they see the kid there, and they're like, oh, yeah, screw that guy. Here, come here, kid. We're getting out of here.
I guess that's when the salesman dies.
It was his last gasp.
And so this actually is from the short story. There is a salesman character who gets smacked by a semi, and he does go into like a ravine or a drainage ditch, and he does die from internal bleeding. So they explain that in the short story, but not in the movie.
Yeah, he's just there and alive. And then dies.
And we're all sad.
But the following morning, James, a bulldozer and a platform truck drive up to the truck stop.
Yeah, so on the highway, there's just a random utility vehicle that's maybe the size of a car with a mounted machine gun, like, what would you call it? Like a mounted turret almost.
Yeah, exactly what I call it. Yeah.
It's like a turret, and the sole function of this car, it's just like a flat tractor car with a turret on it.
It's not even like a car. It's like the size of a mine cart. You know what I mean? Like a mine cart almost. Like it's very, or like one of those golf cart things you see at the airport, right? The flatbed ones you see out on the runway.
Baggage claim one.
Yeah, it's basically that size, but it has a mounted turret on it. I'm like, where did this come from? Can this entity mount its own turrets?
So there's a great shot of just the mounted turret tractor baggage claim cart driving down the highway alongside a bulldozer.
And I'm like, they're taking down the gas station now. The trucks have had enough.
Yeah, well, the trucks stop, and everyone's thinking, we're saved. It turns out they're just low on gas.
Because I was thinking that. I'm like, they've been circling this for 12 hours. We've gone from night to day to night. Like the minimum 12 hours of these trucks going.
There's also a scene where there's a guy named Joey who I think works at the truck stop. He's trying to take a shit, and Emilio Estevez is just questioning Hingle McCringleberry's arsenal.
He comes into the bathroom.
Before Joey says something, he just lets out a...
It's like, it's pretty graphic. They're like...
He's like,
it's wet and juicy, and you're like...
Joey, where did Hendershot get all his stuff? I wasn't supposed to tell you that.
Joey?
Yeah.
Bill here. Does he really got a lot of firepower down the cellar?
Well, you heard him tell me to shut up, didn't you?
Well, what else? Flamethrowers, rifles, what? Talk to me, Joey.
He's got everything. Now go and leave me alone, Billy.
Well, he told me not to tell you. I'm just simple dumbass Joey. Stupid ass Jack.
He does dumbass Jack. Simple ass Jack.
Stupid ass Jack.
Simple ass, stupid ass, dumbass Jack. I noticed that like when he's doing this excretion of his bowels, he's like not pushing. It's very effortless for him.
It's
like
just
talking.
a soundboard.
he's talking. He's like, yeah, I wasn't supposed to tell you. Like, there's no push. There's no grunts. There's no like effort exerted into shitting his pants.
Joey is just built different, and I don't know what to tell you, Nick.
Different bowels, that's for sure.
Speaking of the private armory, there's a great scene where Hingle McCringleberry confronts Emilio Estevez, and Emilio just grabs an AR-15. It's like, why don't you shut up? It's like, oh, jeez. Maybe he is bloodthirsty.
Dude, they get armed real quick, real fast. Everybody all of a sudden just has like automatic weapons. You're like, okay.
Let's get to the quote unquote climax of this movie.
Sure.
This Wanda chick, the waitress, she keeps running out twice. I think she does it. She runs out. She says, "We made you. We made you. You can't do this." Yelling at these murderous, like no one knows what's going on. No one knows anything about what's going on. She's like yelling at these trucks. Everyone's like, "Get back inside."
Well, Bill has theorized that it's aliens. He's smart enough to have figured it out after he bangs Brett
out of nowhere.
He's like, I'm pretty sure they're aliens. Brett's like, that would make sense. And you're like, okay. It's clear, like the trucks clearly aren't sentient. Like there's something else going on. She's like, we made you. And the fucking gun mounted on the back of the truck just mows her down.
Well, before that,
mows her down.
Hingle McCringleberry comes out with the bazooka again. Again, he's just letting it rip.
You want a war? You got one.
Hey, man, I wouldn't do that.
Shut up, brother. I like that chicken chip.
He blows up the bulldozer. The turret vehicle then mows him down. And then all of a sudden becomes like a Vietnam war scene. Like it's just silent. It's just like silence. There's no AC/DC at this moment. It's just awkward silence. Just
AC/DC ceased is where we're at right now.
Nice.
Yeah, I got you. The
band members just like paused and they're just like, it kills two other guys and Hingle, and then the chick goes out, Wanda.
No! That's not fair! You can't do this! We made you!
She blows up the Miller beer truck. There's a couple trucks that bite the dust. There's a garbage truck that catches the first bazooka.
I like to think of him as the bumblebee of the crew. The Green Goblin truck is Optimus,
Obviously.
or Megatron.
There is a truck that gets blown up that is just filled with loose toilet paper rolls. Like no packaging, just loose toilet paper rolls.
And when it explodes, the toilet paper rolls aren't even on fire. They just like explode out like confetti and just like strewn. There's just toilet paper strewn everywhere. Why wouldn't your first shot be at the turret truck? Why would you go after the bulldozer first? I feel like my sights would be trained on the one vehicle that is mounted with a gun.
So did these trucks come to the truck stop as like backup? Like how are these trucks communicating?
Well, it's going to come into play here in the next scene. So the truck then stops and via Morse code honks its horn.
Oh, speaking about random theories that people just throw out. So Brett, out of nowhere, this is like after they had sex, and she's like, I bet it's the comet. We've been in the tail for 12 hours. And at this rate, we just need to wait it out another 7 days. I was like, okay, just throw out that conspiracy theory.
Yeah. Then it cuts to outside with the truck circling, and then the sky's just like illuminated bright green. And you're like, when did this fucking happen? We've been in night for a while. I've never seen green sky. This chick, going back to when she was in the car as a drifter, the radio's on, and the radio's like, 12 microwave facilities have been shut down due to electromagnetic problems. If you're on the freeway, you should get off now. She's like, did you hear that? And the guy driving's like, no. And she's like, get off the road. And she grabs the steering wheel and rips these people off the freeway. And I was like, dude, if I heard on the radio, like, you should get off the freeway, I'd be like, all right, well, I'll take the next exit then.
No, now.
This guy who's driving him, the guy who ends up dying in the ditch from internal bleeding, I'd be pissed too.
During this conspiracy theory scene, Bill also talks to Brett about an island that he wants to go to. And he randomly says, yeah, it's an island with no motors. We could just use a sailboat to get there. And at this point, this is like an hour in the movie. And I'm thinking, all right, these guys are going to make it out and sail off to an island. This ending has been spoiled for me.
But we've already seen this entity, whatever it is, hijack planes. You're not safe, dude.
Let's just fucking talk about it right now. What the hell can they control? Because they choose not to control cars. They can control pretty much, is it electronics or is it motors? Because
dude, it's electronics because they electrocuted our boy, Gustavo Fring. They electrocuted him to death and Moff Gideon. But then at the same time, they can shift the shifter knob of a truck, which is purely mechanical.
What about a lawnmower that's gas powered? There's like spark
apparently
plugs?
They got that too. They can pull the trigger of a machine gun.
Yeah.
But they also have electricity.
So is it telepathic abilities?
If it's telepathic abilities, you got nothing. Your sailboat's screwed anyway.
Let's just get this out of the way. A gun has no electricity, no gas, no motor. It's gunpowder,
a trigger, and a hammer.
So anyway, this mounted turret does do Morse code. The little Boy Scout kid is like, wait, do you hear that? That's Morse code.
I got my merit badge in Morse code.
I'm little Timmy Ginger.
My dad's fucking dead.
Saw a kid get run over by a land Zamboni. So he deciphers some Morse code, and the trucks are asking to be filled with gas or diesel. They call in the bulldozer and the turret car to convey this information to the quote, they're referred to as survivors in this movie of the Dixie Boy.
Can I bring something up? Because I thought about this. So it's, first off, it's honking its horn, which requires the depression of a human hand.
Correct.
Same with the what do they control? A horn it requires to be pressed for like 2 circuits to press for the horn to be honked.
Especially an old school vehicle like that.
So my question is, so let's assume it is aliens. Right? Let's be like, okay, even if you had explained to us that it's aliens, and then I'm thinking back to the beginning. So you know Morse code.
Why do the aliens know Morse code?
Well, they also know fuck you and asshole from the beginning of the movie. They know how to swear at us.
Yeah.
What the hell?
I mean, we have no idea it's aliens, I think, right? What did the instructions say?
Well, Bill has thought to himself that it might be aliens.
Out of nowhere, he theorizes this.
He knows what's going on. Brett's like, yes, can confirm there's a comet. And so Bill basically says, like, we got to gas him up.
First off, when Emilio Estevez decides that he should help fuel up the vehicles, he really got a kick out of his own American Express joke. Because he's like,
hope they take X.
Hope they didn't forget their American Express card. He like laughs maniacally as he walks down. He's like, okay, Bill's snapped. Bill's snapped. He's going crazy. We need to get out of the Dixie Boy.
During this fueling scene, this is when Hell's Bells plays, right? From
Hell's
AC/DC.
Bells.
We get the like it's supposed to be this like high-powered montage, and it's just them filling up trucks with gas.
And they're all just exhausted.
Just Hell's Bells play.
It was weird. It was a weird song choice for the energy because it's supposed to be like an exhausting, tired energy. We're just like,
Hell's Bells.
These people are like collapsing from filling up trucks. They're so tired. And it's just Hell's Bells.
This is also part of the short story. This is Bill saying we should comply with the trucks because we don't want to piss them off.
I'll let you talk to that. I did not do any research on the short story. I'm just taking the film at face value.
So the short story is pretty, like, I wouldn't say accurate, but I mean, everything that happens in the short story happens in this movie.
Well, I hope so, because the short story is written by Stephen King. The screenplay is written by Stephen King, and it's directed by Stephen King. So I hope you put everything in there. So I'm like taking at face value that what you put into this movie is actually what's in your short story. But during this fueling operation, Bill sneaks a grenade. Again, Hendershot's arsenal knows no bounds. This man's, I don't know what's going on. Whoever he's talking to, he's like, when I tell you to run, run. And the guy's like, could you just give me a 7-second synopsis?
Could you be a little bit more specific, please?
Like, could you please tell me what's going on? He's like, no.
So he pins the grenade and just drops it in the turret truck and blows it up.
I'm surprised that whatever this entity is couldn't control grenades as well. Bill drops that. He leads the party out of the diner through a sewer. And so they get back to the main road and the trucks demolish the entire... Like, they waited this long to demolish the truck stop. Like, oh, this moment. So they're going to go to the dock, right? They're going to fulfill Bill's plan to go on the sailboat and get to an island where there's no motorized vehicles.
Everyone's packing heat like a doomsday prepper. They even gave the kid a gun.
It's now Red Dawn.
They walk past like a drive-through speaker.
Well, the drive-through speaker guard starts going, alert, humans, alert, humans.
And then the kid shoots the shit out of it.
He's like, this is for my dad. And just like,
for my dead dad.
He's super dead.
He's super dead.
After he kills the drive-through speaker box, he has so much remorse. He's like, I don't want this anymore. It's like
he hands his gun to Brett, and he's like,
you shot a speaker box. Yeah. Oh yeah. And then Curtis.
So much remorse.
I was like, why'd you? Whatever. And then Curtis and Brett, so the ice cream truck comes back. I'm assuming it was following the kid the whole time, and it finally caught up.
They just rip automatic weapons at the grill, and
Curtis and Brett are just finger on the trigger, just laying waste to bullets. Curtis shoots it, and Brett's like, let me fucking do this. Blows it the up. It shoots forward on an explosion impact.
Oh my
god. There's a guy named Brad.
They get to the marina.
They get to the marina. There's a random guy named Brad. There's a super dead woman hanging out of a car who has like was that beer pong size ball of a diamond on her ring.
Yes, size of a ping pong ball.
It's like comically big. And Brad does the old like fingers together, like, ooh, let me steal this diamond as I'm running for my life.
She clearly tried to get out of the open window of her car. And as she was doing that, whatever entity was in the car, like rolled up the window and like crushed her in it.
And at this point, I was like, okay, Brad's going to bite the dust because he just did a bad decision. And that's how horror movies operate. They kill off shitty people.
In this situation, like, you should not be thinking of greed.
Like peeling off from the group as they're all getting into the sailboat to go to the safe island. The Green Goblin truck shows up and murders Brad.
The Green Goblin truck is a menace.
It just pummels Brad. Bill RPGs the toy truck.
RPG, gentlemen!
Our Green Goblin truck, yeah.
They literally sail off into the sunrise. They don't care about dead Brad. He literally just died 10 seconds ago. This movie ends with one of the most atrocious things you can do to a viewer that just sat through an hour, 45-minute shit show. So not only does this movie start out with instructions, it ends with title card resolution. I'll read it.
Could you please play the Coach Carter song, Hope, over this?
So we get Coach Cartered again because we get title cards that explains what happened after the fact. This is a quote-unquote epilogue. I will read the title cards verbatim alongside the song Hope. 2 days later, a large UFO was destroyed in space by a Russian, in quotations, weather satellite, which happened to be equipped with a laser cannon and Class 4 nuclear missiles. Approximately 6 days later, the Earth passed beyond the tail of Rhea M, exactly as predicted, period. This next part shows up later. The survivors of the Dixie Boy are still survivors. What the f***? What?
And that's it. Finn.
While we're here, that's plot talk for this shit show. While we're here, by the way,
end credits.
If this movie didn't have instructions and didn't have that resolution title card, would it be better? Because it seems like they're over explaining, and the bookend title cards do not show up at all in the movie. The only thing that shows up in the movie that makes a reference to the title cards is Brett and Bill's conspiracy theories of, I think it's the comet and I think it's aliens. But if you didn't have the title cards, then those would just be kind of weird conspiracy. The comet part wouldn't make sense.
You're like, oh, the crazy parolee and the drifter thinks it's aliens. So what?
Well, I'm just going to transition this into a talking point.
Hey, real quick. Do we even need nitpicks at this point in the game?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, this whole goddamn experience was like, the whole movie was a nitpick. I have nitpicks, and just to list them off.
Nitpicks.
Why are the only murderous vehicles trucks? How are these things sentient? Oh, the kid hides from the trucks as if they can see? Are the headlights eyes? I thought, are they omnipresent? Are the aliens all knowing? When they start making noise, like saving the salesman, do the trucks like hear them because they come rushing over after they start making too much noise?
How do they know our language?
Why didn't they keep using the bazooka on the trucks? That seemed very effective. And obviously there wasn't a concern for ammo.
And what can they control?
I have so many unanswered questions. Do you have anything?
I have so much, but let's get to the talking points.
As I've stated, this is based off a short story by Stephen King. You were in my short film in college.
I was.
It was 8 minutes long. For whatever reason, I couldn't understand the concept of a short film because the instructor, the professor, literally said, don't make a beginning, middle, end because this is a short film. I made a beginning, middle, end and just said, fuck it. That's how I know narratives. I don't know how to do short films, but short films, short stories, they're kind of like small vignettes of a concept. So in this short story of Trucks by Stephen King, this is just about a group of survivors who get pinned down in this truck stop. These trucks become murderous and no one knows why. Like I said, a lot of the same things happen. The salesman gets internally bled out. The trucks are just gruesomely running over people. And then they communicate in Morse code that they need gas. And the narrator, who got replaced by Bill, he complies with this demand and starts pumping gas. It ends with just a whole line of trucks coming in for gas. And the narrator just seems like he's stuck in this repetitive hellhole of, am I just going to be filling these murderous trucks gas like a slave?
You are enslaved. Yeah.
My whole life. And then two planes fly over and the narrator says, oh, I wonder if those planes have people in it. Or like, I wonder if those are unmanned. Those are probably unmanned planes. And then it just ends on like a somber, like, oh shit, like that guy's just stuck in a cycle.
Would have been a better movie.
So that's a short story. We're just going to leave you thinking because we're not going to necessarily provide a resolution. It's just something to chew on. That's the perfect way I can describe short films and short stories. They just leave you with something to chew on. This one just shits in your mouth. Producers come in. They're like, hey, let's make this into a movie, but this needs to have a beginning, middle, end. So that's where a big major crutch came in because they felt the need to explain why these trucks were acting up and acting murderous. They did the hardest shoehorn job I've ever witnessed in a movie
So bad.
to provide this
shoehorn
very
job.
super expository reasoning behind why the trucks are murderous, when the best part of like murderous trucks is the mystery. It's just like unknowing. It's just like, I don't want to know. This is happening. We don't need to explain why. But they just like shoot themselves in the foot twice and get a soda can shot at their nuts with this move.
It sounds much more Stephen King than this movie is. Like a little bit of horror. There's no heroes. There's no villains. There just is this hopelessness.
It's like Goosebumps, you know, like a scary concept. And you're just supposed to be like, oh God, that sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah. Tales from the Crypt, kind of in that vein.
But when Stephen King was tasked with flushing this out to be adapted for a screenplay, it just made it worse.
Yeah. So that's my second part to this is it's not like you took a written work and then butchered it, right? As a studio, is the same person with the written work has now said, I will write the script and the screenplay for this, and I will direct it, and this is my vision. I would have maybe given it a little sympathy, saying like, wow, you took a lot of creative license with this full-length film off of this short story, but you don't get that. You don't get that benefit. You're the same guy who wrote this short story and then said, let me write an hour. First off, it wasn't an hour. It wasn't an hour and 20. So it's an hour 45. All right. He milked the screen time. He's like, I'm going to tell 100 minutes worth of story. And this is what I'm coming up with. And this is on you, dude. There's no studio issues. And they didn't give him a huge budget. 10 million. We've looked at movies from the mid to late 80s. 10 million's a pretty like easy, like they were probably like, all right, this is your directorial debut. This is your writing debut. We're just going to give you a little bit, see what you can do with it. We've seen people do really well with small budgets. This is just a failure in writing, dialogue, plot, storytelling. This is just a top to bottom failure on his part. If he would have kept it to a short story and just would have made this like a Goosebumps story, fine. It would have probably been really good and would have like kept me thinking afterwards.
It seems like this would have been better off just going from a short story to a short film. Sometimes you can really flush out a feature length film out of a short story, but you have to have really good writing, which we didn't have, which was weird because it was the same writer.
I'll admit, not a big Stephen King fan. Never have been. Not a big fan of the way he tells stories. He seems a little predictable. And when he's unpredictable, it doesn't strike me well. Similar to last week, we talked about like the late stage M. Night Shyamalan, where you're like, okay, I expect your quote unquote unexpected twist on this story. But this is, I think, probably the best example of somebody who had something good and then sold out for Hollywood.
In your own words, Nick, talk about going over your skis on this one. Stephen King, He wasn't ready. Let me talk about this shit show of a production.
He ain't built for this.
He is not built different. He is built the same as all of us, and he was not ready to direct a movie. Can I tell you about the production of this shit show?
Take it away.
So in retrospect, Stephen King calls this a, quote, moron movie and a misfire on his part. He openly admits...
Can't call it anything else.
Let me just put this out there right away. This was filmed in North Carolina, which was a right-to-work state.
Mm-hmm.
So this means utilizing union agreements is prohibited. So unlike California and New York, they're just like, hey, anybody can come work on a movie set.
Right to work is you can work in that industry and you get the same protections that the union agrees to. But if anything goes wrong, you don't get like union representation, say in like a labor court.
Keep that in mind. Most Hollywood productions have union workers who know what they're doing. Stephen King openly admitted back then and today that he had no idea what he was doing the entire time. Red flag number one.
Shocked.
There's a guy named Dino De Laurentiis who's this big Italian producer, like super famous, super successful, from Italy. He was a producer on 1976's King Kong, Flash Gordon movie, by the way.
Okay.
So he brought in professionals, except for Stephen King. He had zero experience directing. So this is from movieweb.com. Producer Dino De Laurentiis had already worked on a Stephen King property before with Firestarter in 1984. That's that Drew Barrymore movie. And Cat's Eye in 1985. Though King wasn't a fan of Firestarter, he would pen the screenplay for Cat's Eye and subsequently become friendly with De Laurentiis. For their next project, King wanted to direct, and De Laurentiis didn't really turn down the opportunity to employ one of the most popular authors at the time for his directorial debut. That's why we're here. Let's get into the nitty gritty. And by the nitty gritty, I mean the main issue. Stephen King was a problem on set.
Again, shocked.
In his own words, the problem with that film is that I was coked out of my mind all through its production, and I really didn't know what I was doing.
Makes sense.
Stephen King famously has had drug addiction problems, alcoholism problems. Members of the crew would recall that this fool was just putting down 6 a.m. beers at early call times. By 8:30, he might be on his 10th beer. So he's drinking. Like, Stephen King is literally drunk while making this movie. He's literally coked out while making this movie. He's eating sardines for breakfast. He's got fish breath.
You eat the salt content, man.
There's some weird like underwear superstition. They had Yeardley Smith just doing her own stunts because this is a non-union project. So they're like, oh, we're not going to do any protection of the actors.
We got a $10 million budget. Go to town.
I mean, if you die, you die. You don't even have the Simpsons job yet. So who cares? So Yeardley Smith is out there doing barrel rolls, dodging cars coming at her. And then we're going to get into the huge elephant in the room, Armando Iannucci. This guy,
Iannucci.
He is the director of photography on this movie. He gets super injured during this super unprofessional run set. The lawnmower scene, Nick.
Yes.
Where it's chasing down the kid. They had it kind of like up on like a wood shim, I think maybe to get like a better shot, better angle. And Iannucci, who only kind of can speak Italian, he had a translator on set. He's like, hey, Stephen King, can we remove the blades from the lawnmower? Because this is dangerous. And this non-union movie set was like, no, we're not going to prioritize safety at all.
That is a 3-minute. I have replaced blades on lawnmowers. It is a 3-minute deal.
Coked out, drunk Stephen King's like, no, it will take too long. Plus, I like seeing the blades. So Iannucci's like, you can't even see the blades in the shot. We're doing unnecessarily dangerous activities, and you can't even get what you're going for here. Special effects guy needs to rig up this lawnmower to activate and drive uncontrollably by itself, because that's the whole point of this movie. They turn it on, doesn't go. Jack, amp it up. Put down the throttle. Stage 2, doesn't move. Full throttle. Boom. Rips. This thing like shoots off like a bat out of hell. It starts ripping towards the camera. It actually starts grinding up the plastic protective piece on the camera. And no one's telling the special effects guy to shut it off, stop it. And it ends up chewing up the wood shim that got put underneath it. Projectile splits towards Armando. He catches a wood splinter in the eye. The splinter gets stuck in the eye. He's bleeding. It's like just stuck in there. And he gets helicoptered out of the set. He's freaking out. Everyone's freaking out.
Rightfully.
Iannucci loses that eye. He has 2 surgeries. They shut down production for 2 weeks. He comes back. He actually finishes the project. And he wears an eye patch. And everyone's like, oh, it just needs to heal, get better. No, never got better. He lost his eyesight in that eye. Ends up suing Stephen King.
Good.
For $18 million.
Did he win?
Got settled out of court. King and company were being sued for being reckless and responsible for injuring Iannucci when the lawnmower was modified to go extra fast, sent the splinters of wood into his face and his eye, which never recovered. The record has established that the film was made with a tight budget and an inexperienced non-union workers. Eyewitnesses' accounts of Iannucci's injury are pretty damning as far as King's own ineptitude. Filming paused for 2 weeks while he got the surgery, and then he returned with an eye patch to finish the job.
That's almost reminiscent of the lawsuit of the
Rust.
You hired
Was that also non-union?
It was union, but it was like nepotism. Like the person hired was like the daughter of somebody who was a friend. And so the person was inexperienced. So it's like you put an inexperienced person onto the set and that caused injury.
Yeah. So not only was Stephen King just like a under the influence problem, he cost this guy his eyesight. If that happened to me, I'd be livid, dude. You affect like my bodily health, and now I have to deal with that for life.
That's something where I would look and I would say, I will remove the blade personally. It will take me 2 minutes, but I will not stand next to this while this is happening. I will walk away from this job. Fuck you. My goodness.
Now to wrap up this shit show, you want to know the worst part about this?
That's not the worst?
I mean, that might be the worst, but I think the most hilarious part about this is that Stephen King insisted on doing a trailer where he talks to the audience. He's standing in front of the Green Goblin semi. In his own words,
I've written several motion pictures, but I want to tell you about a movie called Maximum Overdrive, which is the first one I've directed. Wow. A lot of people have directed Stephen King novels and stories. And I finally decided if you want something done right, you ought to do it yourself.
Yikes.
Dude.
Yikes, dude. And it's the biggest piece of shit I've ever seen.
I'm going to say this flat out. No
filter.
You say filter. Like, I've never had a filter on this podcast. Not a fan of his. I feel like he's a self-aggrandizing asshole. He's very active on Twitter. He likes being the center of attention. He's a piece of shit, in my opinion. And this takes me to our next talking point. Like, take everything you said out of the equation and just take the movie at face value. Stephen King as a director, yes or no?
Absolutely no. And that's very clear from this.
Stephen King as a screenwriter, yes or no?
No. Based on this, no.
And it's like, dude, you're not that good. You have a very niche audience.
You're not that guy.
You're not that guy.
He's not that guy, pal.
Absolutely.
Can I piggyback on this? Just for perspective on this, he's had super famous stories become very well-received movies like The Shining, Christine by John Carpenter.
It.
Funny enough, Stand By Me, which came out 2 weeks later. So this is directed by Rob Reiner.
Fucking Rob Reiner.
Right, Rob Reiner.
My goodness.
Hauls in $52 million and plays for 4 months. Meanwhile, Maximum Overdrive only lasted a couple weeks in theaters and only made $7.4 million. So these are movies based on stories from the same writer. One does super well in the box office and with reviews, and the other one bombs and is a critical flop. The one that bombs as the critical flop is the original author of the stories. So it goes to tell you, hey, he can have like a great idea. He can write some great stories, make some captivating concepts. But when you come into the movie theaters, to the popcorn coliseum, you got to come correct. So that's why you need to hand it off to someone who knows what they're doing, like Rob Reiner or John Carpenter or so-and-so. Stephen King stepping into the ring falls flat on his face in this one and makes the guy lose his eye in the process.
Do you know when the short story was written by chance?
I believe it's 1974-ish.
Building off of that.
1973.
I think it shows that maybe he had some ideas. He could be an idea guy where like, oh, wow, this is a storyline. This is a storyline. But you have to put it in the hands of actually talented people. And I don't think he's that talented of an individual.
When I read that he came to Dino De Laurentiis and said, I want to direct this, that's where it's like, that's where this movie was killed off.
To be honest, I don't think his stories are that crazy. It's a lot of modern twists on classical ideas of like the technology of your day, you becoming a slave to the technology of your day. That's not a crazy idea. That's an idea that's been around for a very long time. He put a twist on it. He stamped his name on it. But like, you had to give it to a screenwriter to make it good. If Stephen King tried to write and direct The Shining, it would have been another Maximum Overdrive.
And I think he famously is outspoken about how he hates the movie. And it's like, dude, you obviously have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
when it comes to movies. Like, stick to pen and paper, dog.
Ugh.
So the short story is written in 1973. This movie comes out in 1986. But meanwhile, he writes the novel Christine, which is about a car that becomes possessed by a supernatural force and becomes murderous. That gets published in 1983. So that comes out 3 years before this movie. And I'm thinking, why didn't he just want to do that movie? Why did he want to expand upon his short story of trucks? Because Christine was like a full fleshed out novel. This is an interesting phenomenon. The problem with books being adapted to movies, fans of the books always have gripes with the movies because they say, oh, they cut all these things out, or they changed out this entire storyline because they needed to fit within an hour, 90-minute runtime. The problem with the short story is that you take a basic idea and you just blow it up and enlarge it, and you do no due diligence of expanding upon the reasoning, which was what this movie did. So my question is, why didn't he just want to make a Christine movie that was already fully fleshed out and also had to deal with the same topic of just a murderous autonomous car?
It's a great question. That builds into what I was going to mention. How do I say this delicately? Not even delicately. I'm not a delicate person. How do I say this correctly?
I am.
Some people are heroes of the moment, where you're like, oh, wow, this story works in the moment. And even like, let's take Maximum Overdrive. Once you build out the characters and you build out the plot, you realize there was nothing there. You were just the only person writing these stories in that period of time. You were just the only person. Maybe you got lucky. Maybe you knew a publisher. Maybe you were just the only guy with that idea at that time. But his ideas aren't that revolutionary. They're very simple ideas that are just applied to modern moments. The Shining, right? A guy who loses his sanity in a hotel with his family. Guys losing their sanity, like, you could date that back to like Roman and Latin and Greek stories. That's not a crazy idea. He modernized it and then handed it to a talented screenwriter and director and let them tell the story. Right? We talk about it all the time. Like, oh, this is just an author and their story got butchered by a studio and butchered by a screenwriter and butchered by a director. Did it get butchered, or were the characters and the story and the plot just never that good to begin with?
Self-jammed.
See, he got self-jammed. He got jammed. He did, man. I'm telling you, because he had full creative license on this, and it was here's
and I heard there was a lot
chance.
of improvising of the writing, which makes total sense after watching this.
Yeah, because he had no control over it, because he was like, oh, that sounds better than what I originally wrote. That sounds better than my idea, because your ideas were not that fucking good. And that takes me to my talking point. Take all of the shit show out of it. Is Stephen King a good screenwriter and director?
No.
Terrible. My last talking point here was, you had mentioned at the top of this podcast, and you hear this a lot with bad movies where you're like, oh, but it's a cult classic. Cult classics at least have some redeeming value. Does this deserve to be a cult classic?
In my opinion, no, because I thoroughly did not enjoy this movie. But as we'll get into very soon here, we'll see that the people did kind of give it benefit of the doubt. But in my opinion, I would put The Wraith way above. I would put the other Sheen movie way above this.
Better Sheen. Let's get to our sarcastic selling points, friend.
All right, my sarcastic selling point for 1986's Maximum Overdrive is put Stephen King on coke and booze to direct a movie that's like Christine meets Final Destination.
Nice. I wrote down, because the sarcastic selling point is like if you were standing in front of movie studio execs, right? And you were trying to like sell this.
I'm reading yours.
Yeah. And you were trying to sell this, right? And you were standing in front of movie execs. My sarcastic selling point was, for the love of God, please don't let me make this movie.
I pictured you as like standing in front of like a board of producers with like a sign that says that, like there's a guy behind the counter with a gun.
I'd have a PowerPoint. Slide 1 would be called Maximum Overdrive. Slide 2 would say, please don't greenlight this film. Slide 3 would say Finn. Like, that was it. That would be it. Please, for the love of God, don't let me make this movie.
final review. Fight.
Let's get into our final reviews here.
Let's do it.
Rotten Tomatoes. Okay, so this is where we're going to see the huge difference between the critics
Massive jump.
and the audiences. Critics giving this a 15%. Yikes. But very accurate. Rotten Tomatoes fans, however, they're giving this a 50. So not stellar, but still a little bit high for us.
And Metacritic critics are a little more generous than the Rotten Tomatoes. So the critics give it a 24, adjusted to 2.4 on our scale. The people give it a 6.4.
Interesting.
Out of 10.
Metacritic coming in a little bit more forgiving than Rotten Tomatoes.
I'd say much more, yeah.
And now, finally, our basic bitch score from IMDb, 5.4. Nailed it.
My dude.
Okay, let me hit you with a laughable log line here.
And give me your thoughts and give me your popcorn points, bud.
Now, before I cross this threshold, I just want to say one last final time. Is this the worst? Spawn pissed me off. I loathe that movie. I loathe the director, the execution, everything. I give that a 0.6. That's a low
as shit, dude.
I was super confident I wouldn't come anywhere near that. Now, after watching this movie, kind of considering it.
It doesn't seem like a low bar anymore, does it?
Kind of considering it.
Give me that log line, buddy.
A hitchhiking chick bangs a greasy parolee at a truck stop in a town full of dumb hicks who don't understand basic survival instincts and make the worst fatal decisions when faced with the unreasonable conflict of sentient, slow-moving, bloodthirsty utility trucks caused by aliens. 0.5 popcorn points.
Oh, shit!
This is cremated corn. This is cremated corn, dog.
Shit.
Okay. Last season, I expressed my awe, my shookness. I was like, I will barely go below 3. I don't think I'll break 2. I don't think I'll break 1. I won't even come close to below 1. In the same calendar year, I'm going below 1.
God damn.
Twice.
That's a lot, dude.
Twice.
There's bad movies out there.
Twice. Courtesy of Spawn, we have a new category. 0 to 1 is labeled as cremated corn. This is literally eating ashes, inhaling it like the cinnamon challenge, getting it stuck in your lungs so it stays with you for life. That's what it's like watching Maximum Overdrive. You know what really grinds my gears about Maximum Overdrive?
Tell me.
Shitty movie.
This is bullshit. I don't want to be in that shitty movie.
Shitty movie.
Shitty movie.
It makes 0 sense. The acting is horrible. And you want to know the worst part, Nick?
Tell me the worst part, buddy.
I didn't even get what I signed up for. We said it at the top of this. We were looking forward to that 80s camp, bloody gruesome, really cheesy slaughterhouse style horror movie. And it didn't even deliver on that. It was boring as shit. It was so bad.
So bad.
So bad. So that I was like, okay, maybe like a 3. And then when I dive into the behind the scenes, no. Stephen King asking to be the director of this movie, telling people to go see this movie because he's doing it, and that means it's being done right. And then I learned about the shit show, garbage performance that he put on. That's like going to the Super Bowl, throwing 8 interceptions, fumbling the ball 4 times, doing a Jimmy Garoppolo safety to finish the game. You kidding me?
Yikes.
You kidding me? No. Stephen King, sit down, get back to the typewriter. This is not your shtick. This is a 0.5. It's cremated corn from Captain Popcorn, Captain Pop himself. I'm popping off on this shit, dog. This was horrible. I'm out.
He's doing it.
I'm out.
He's doing it.
Hit me with that laughable log line and your popcorn points.
All right.
And back up the mic if you need to.
I'm going to. Do you remember at the beginning of this movie when I said I knew the score 5 minutes in and it never deviated?
That's impressive.
Remember that. My laughable log line. Either machines or electricity gets hijacked and decide that the best use of their time It's to terrorize a bunch of hicks in North Carolina at a gas station where the owner has a bazooka. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
James! Let me run through my criteria. Story, 0. Entertainment value, 0. World building, 0. Character development, 0. Dialogue, 0. Acting, 0. Plot, 0. Directing, 0. James, this movie is a 0.0. This is nothing. This is it, dude.
You did it.
This is it, dude. This is not a movie. This is not a film. This deserves none of your time. Every movie I've said to this point is at fucking least, you should see it for the terribleness of it. This is not Stephen King said it's a moron movie. Well, guess what, motherfucker? You did it. You wrote it. You wrote the story. You wrote the screenplay. You directed it. This is fucking trash. Okay, at least in Spawn, it was a screenwriter who took existing material. You're the same guy. You were the guy. You wrote the story, you wrote the screenplay, and you directed it. Dude, this is nothing. This is a 0.0. This is literally if you took kernels of popcorn and you put them into an incinerator and you put them into this doesn't even exist, dude. This is you asked me, okay, so in the context of the podcast, in the context of every movie you've ever seen, this is it, dude. This is the worst. This is the worst thing I've ever seen produced. Period. I don't even want to call it a movie. What did it do right, James? What did it tell me? Because I'm in a fucking loss. Dude, I'm at a loss for words right now. What could you name one redeeming aspect of this film?
So my 0.5 popcorn points comes in.
Where did the 0.5 come in?
It comes in from laughing at the kid getting run over by the steamroller.
That's it.
And that's it.
This is it, dude. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. This is it.
And Giancarlo Esposito making a cameo before he was super famous.
That's fair. You don't get credit for that. I'm sorry. This is, good luck. Any movie. I dare somebody to make a movie as bad as this. Like, this is, you could, if you tried to make a movie this bad, you couldn't even do it. This is awful. This is it. This is the bottom of the barrel for me. This is the 0.0. And if you add 7 decimal points to it, this is a 0.0000000. There's not anything other than zeros to this fucking film for me. This is the worst thing I've ever seen. Season 2 of the podcast, dude, we've hit rock bottom.
Season 2 sucks. Season 2, we've been watching some stinkers, dude.
This is it for me, dude.
I don't even need to change the chart because the chart starts out as 0. So your column is already complete.
If anything comes out worse than this, and God, I just can't imagine anything worse than this, we'll create a whole new fucking scale. I might just fall off the face of the earth and move to Antarctica. If I ever see anything as bad or worse than this fucking thing that was produced. And the fact that the audience on Rotten Tomatoes gave this a 50 just tells me that 50% of people who have seen this
should live in Wilmington, North Carolina, because that town is full of idiots.
You know, we said, is this the worst movie ever? And then we said, oh, is this the podcast? Is this maybe you've ever seen? All of the above. I would watch Pluto Nash 50 times, 100 times, 1,000 more times. Like, as a person who worked in Hollywood, this movie, I know it did, but it should offend your every sense.
It does. It's funny because I think on the Pluto Nash review, you said I would watch Stealth 50 times. Now that Pluto Nash has jumped up to stealth status for you versus this movie.
If you gave me a scale of Maximum Overdrive to Stealth is a 10. And Maximum Overdrive remains a 0. This is that bad. I found myself struggling to watch this movie. If we didn't have a podcast,
you're getting overcooked. You're getting overcooked. All right, I gotta cut you off. All right, I want you to hold that thought because coming up on the goddamn docket is a movie that apparently is ass. So that's why I left a little bit of wiggle room. I do put this below Spawn. I am leaving the 0.4 and below for possibly the worst things I've ever seen. In Nick's eyes, this is the biggest piece of shit he's ever seen.
It's just a fart in the wind.
Well, just like Plankton, we went into Maximum Overdrive this week, and it got crazy. It got Hingle McCringleberried. We got bazookaed. It went bonkers, to say the least. It's week 2 of spooky season. We're out here watching pieces of shit, apparently.
Season 2, the season of ass.
Ass booty cheek movies. I don't know what to say. The only thing I can say right now is to please follow us on Instagram and YouTube at Just Play It Podcast. Please follow us on Twitter at Just Play It Pod.
Please do it.
We hope that you join us next week as we watch a movie that Nick inadvertently on accident watched last week because he thought it was the movie of the week last week. But it's a slasher movie from the 90s.
It is a 90s. I would say it is the like prototypical slasher film for modern horror. So tune in next week for that.
I feel like that's a super generous hint, and you can probably guess what we're going to be watching next week. Spooky season rolls on.
4 weeks ago, your hint was it involves a Batmobile. So you know what? I feel like I can be generous these days.
I'm not knocking you for your generous hint. I'm just saying, if you don't understand those hints and know what we're talking about in this spooky season, then I can't help you.
Then you're just as bad as Stephen King as a director.
But in the meantime, stick it with us at Just Play It Podcast. We're heading gone. We'll see you next week. And remember, if you need to shoot that gap, wait till the last possible second. Get clipped by a semi-truck, roll over, and put your wife in danger. Because that's the only way to do it.
Corn dog out.
I'm your worst nightmare.
Nut shots him, bends him over, and then just f***s his asshole with a can of pop.
And it's the biggest piece of shit I've ever seen.